The moment that saved my marriage was the same moment that almost destroyed me, and I never would have found out the truth if my appendix hadn't tried to kill me first. My name is Zandra Calloway Priest, and I have spent 11 years building a life I thought was solid as Georgia red clay. 11 years of early mornings and silent compromises, of swallowing words that tasted like copper and calling it peace. I am a pediatric occupational therapist with calluses on my palms from the resistance bands I use with my patients, and I have a scar behind my left ear from a car accident I survived at 22. I say this so you understand. I know what it feels like when something inside you breaks suddenly, without warning, with no time to prepare. My husband's name is Cresswell Priest. Cress, I call him, the way you shorten something precious without meaning to diminish it. Cress has a baritone voice that used to vibrate through the wall of my chest when he sang in the kitchen on Sunday mornings. Used to. That word, used to, is the saddest migration in the English language. It was a Wednesday in October, the kind of October that Atlanta does perfectly, with bronze light cutting through amber leaves and the air smelling like wood smoke and something sweet rotting underneath. I had been feeling off for 2 days, a gnawing beneath my right side that I kept attributing to stress, to the Henderson boys' session running long, to the 3 cups of coffee I'd been surviving on. Therapists are notoriously terrible at applying their own clinical judgment to themselves. We are the cobblers barefoot in winter. By Wednesday evening, the gnaw had become a voice. By 8:15, it was screaming. Cress was on a work call in his home office, the room we used to call the Someday Studio, back when we thought he'd use it to finally record the music he kept locked inside him. He'd converted it into a space for his remote consulting work 2 years ago, and I'd mourned the guitar gathering dust in the corner without telling him, because we had stopped telling each other small griefs by then. I knocked on his door and he opened it 3 inches, the way you open a door to a stranger. Zandra. Not baby, not love, just my name, flat as a prescription label. I'm not feeling well, I said. Something's wrong, in my side. He looked at me the way you look at a weather app before deciding whether to carry an umbrella. Measuring, calculating inconvenience. I'm in the middle of something. I know, I'm sorry. And I was apologizing for my own body, again, the way I'd been doing for years without noticing the pattern. I might need to go to the hospital. Can you drive yourself? 3 words that changed the temperature of a marriage. I drove myself to Emory University Hospital. I sat alone in the passenger waiting area for 47 minutes before a nurse named Daphne with chevron pattern scrubs called my name. I texted Cress. At Emory, waiting. He responded 40 minutes later with a single thumbs up emoji. A thumbs up, like I'd sent him a meme. The ER physician, a compact Haitian-American woman named Dr. Urzuli Montclair, pressed her fingers along my lower abdomen with the focused authority of someone who does not traffic in uncertainty. She ordered a CT scan within 12 minutes of my arrival. Her efficiency felt like tenderness. Your appendix is acutely inflamed, she said, after I'd been moved to a proper room. We're going to need to operate tonight. It hasn't ruptured yet, but we don't want to wait. Tonight. The word landed differently when it meant surgery. I should call my husband, I said. Of course, she said. Do you want me to step out? I shook my head. I didn't need privacy for that call anymore. Privacy implies intimacy, and we'd been operating on fumes for so long I'd forgotten what the full tank felt like. Cress didn't answer the first time. Or the second. On the 3rd call, he picked up, and I could hear the clatter of ice in a glass, the low murmur of music in the background, the sound of someone breathing a life I wasn't part of. Hey. Cress. They're taking me into surgery. Tonight. My appendix. A pause. The kind of pause that is not processing time, but rather a small, urgent conversation happening in the space behind someone's eyes. Okay, he said finally. I'll come. I hung up. I lay in that hospital bed, with the institutional fluorescence buzzing above me and the distant sound of a baby crying somewhere down the hall, and I tried to locate the feeling I should be having. Fear, relief, gratitude, and found only a vast, cool emptiness, like standing in a room after all the furniture's been moved out. It was the nurse, Daphne, who brought me my phone charger from the locker, who said, "You want some water, hun?" with such unguarded kindness that I felt my throat tighten. It is always the unexpected tenderness that breaks you open. They let me keep my phone until they came to wheel me to the OR. I was alone, Cress still not arrived, and in that specific loneliness, I did something I have no rational explanation for. I opened my laptop. I'd had it in my work bag, which I'd grabbed automatically when I left the house because I am the kind of woman who grabs her work bag in a medical emergency. Old habits are barnacles. I opened it to distract myself. I thought I'd read something, watch something, disappear into anything that wasn't the antiseptic smell and the IV in my left hand. But the laptop opened directly to the application I'd been using that afternoon. A split-screen video conferencing tool I use to share screens with remote clients. And in the left panel of that split screen, like an afterthought, like a window left open to the wrong weather, I could see a feed. Our home network. Our living room. The shared laptop Cress and I kept on the coffee table for casual use, with the camera I'd never thought to disable, connected to our home sync system. He thought it was off. He didn't know I could see him. I want to be precise about what I saw, because precision is the only mercy I can offer both of us. Cress was not with another woman. He was alone, and he was crying. Not the polite, contained crying of a man who has learned to minimize his own grief. He was folded into the corner of our couch, our olive green couch that I'd picked out from an estate sale in Decatur, with his knees pulled up and his face pressed into his hands, and his whole body was shaking with the particular violence of grief that has been held back too long. The kind of crying that leaves a person hollow afterward. On the coffee table in front of him, an open notebook. From where I was, I could make out some of the handwriting, large, urgent, the penmanship of someone writing fast before courage runs out. And beside the notebook, a prescription bottle I recognized, not mine, his. The antidepressants he'd told me he'd stopped taking 8 months ago because he said he felt fine. He didn't look fine. I watched him for 4 minutes before the orderlies came for me. 4 minutes that compressed 11 years into something I could finally see clearly. The way your vision sharpens in the seconds after a flash of lightning before darkness floods back. I went into surgery with Cresswell Priest's grief burned into the back of my eyes. The surgeon was named Dr. Obafemi Adeniyi, a tall Yoruba man with reading glasses pushed up into his hairline, who told me the procedure would take between 45 minutes to an hour and a half, laparoscopic, minimal risk. I'd be home in 2 days if all went well. I remember thinking his voice sounded like a cello. I remember thinking, absurdly, that Cress would have liked his voice. I woke up in recovery with a pain that was manageable and a clarity that was not. Cress was sitting in the chair beside my bed. He had come. He looked like a man who'd driven through something, rumpled, red-eyed, with the particular exhaustion that has nothing to do with sleep deprivation. He was holding my hand. He'd taken it while I was unconscious, and the thought of that, of him sitting there holding the hand of a woman who couldn't know he was doing it, undid something tight in my sternum. "Hey," he said when my eyes opened. "Hey," I said. We stayed there in the silence of the recovery room, his thumb moving in slow circles on the back of my hand, and I thought about all the things I didn't say, about the 4 minutes, about the antidepressants, about the olive green couch and the notebook, and the grief he'd been carrying in a room with the door closed, alone. I thought about how neither of us had been honest, how I'd been performing fine for so long that I'd forgotten what real felt like, how he had too, how we'd both been drowning in separate rooms of the same house, each of us too proud or too frightened or too exhausted to knock on the other's wall. "You cried," I said finally. My voice was rough from the anesthesia tube. He went very still. "When I left for the hospital," I said carefully, "the camera on the laptop. I could see the living room on my screen. I saw you, Cress." He didn't deny it. He didn't deflect. He just looked at me with something naked and unguarded in his face, something I hadn't seen in years, and said, "I thought you were going to die." I wasn't going to die. I know that now. I didn't know it then. He exhaled. And I sat there thinking, if you died tonight, I would have let you leave this house thinking I didn't care. I let you drive yourself. I let you go alone. Zandra. My name, but not flat this time, fractured. I am so sorry. There are apologies that are performances and apologies that are confessions. This was the second kind. "The notebook," I said. He looked at the floor. I've been writing, things I should have said to you, things I've been feeling that I don't know how to. He stopped. I'm not doing well. I haven't been for a while. I stopped taking the medication because I thought needing it made me less. He couldn't finish that sentence. Men swallow so much. Less what? I said softly. Less enough. For you. I squeezed his hand. It was the first genuine physical communication we'd had in months. You stopped talking to me, I said. I thought you stopped loving me. I stopped talking to everyone, he said, including myself. This is what no one tells you about a long marriage. It doesn't fall apart in a single earthquake. It erodes in the way rivers carve canyons, slowly, constantly, through the smallest frictions repeated 10,000 times, until one day you look down and discover an impossible distance between you and the person you promised to stay close to. But the canyon is not the end of the story. The canyon is just what you're working with now. Dr. Montclair checked on me the following morning, and in the gentle efficiency of her manner, I saw a woman who had been delivering news, bad and good, for so many years that she had learned to make truth feel survivable. I want to be like that, I thought. I want to make truth feel survivable, starting with my own. Cres brought me home 2 days later. He carried a bag. He made the soup, not from a can, but from actual chicken and thyme and the bay leaves I keep in the drawer above the stove. He sat on the edge of our bed that evening and read to me from a novel he'd found on my nightstand, his baritone moving through the sentences like something returning from a long distance. I didn't tell him I'd been lonely. I showed him the notebook I had started keeping, filled with the same kinds of things I imagined his notebook contained. Small griefs, swallowed words, the copper taste of silences I'd chosen not to break. We read them to each other eventually, not that night, but a week later, sitting at the kitchen table with the October light going gold through the window. It was uncomfortable. It was accurate. It was the most honest conversation we'd had in 4 years. We started seeing a couples therapist named Renfield Okafor, who has the patience of a man who has watched entire relationships learn to breathe again and has decided to find this beautiful rather than exhausting. He gave us tools, which Cres approached the way he approaches most things, with initial skepticism and then quiet dedication. We do the work, most days. Some days we forget and fall back into old grooves, and one of us has to knock on the other's wall, and the other has to answer. We answer now. My appendix tried to kill me, and instead it gave me back my husband. Or rather, it gave me the 4 minutes I needed to see what was already there, what had always been there underneath the erosion and the silence and the closed doors. A man breaking apart in a corner of a couch, crying because he could not bear the thought of losing me. That's a love story, an ugly, complicated, honest one, the only kind worth keeping. I'm not going to tell you our marriage is fixed. Fixed is a word for appliances. What we are is changed. We are people who know now that we have to say the things that taste like copper instead of swallowing them. People who have learned that asking for help from a doctor, from a therapist, from a medication, from a spouse is not a subtraction. It is the only mathematics that ever adds up. Creswell Priest still has a baritone voice that vibrates through walls. Last Sunday he sang in the kitchen again, something slow and unpolished and entirely his own. I sat on the olive green couch and let myself hear it. If this story cracks something open in you, hit that like button and subscribe. More real stories like this one are waiting for you.